So I think looking at some of the barriers for, in particular, Native American folks, especially in sciences, sometimes it's the educational background that you get. If you have been brought up on the reservation, some of the schools are great, some of them are not as good as far as having teachers that are able to teach, say, higher levels of math and science. And so that can kind of put you at a disadvantage already when you go off to college. Also, just going from different environments to the next, even for myself, going from a small town school to community college was difficult. And then kind of figured it out, was able to have a great support from, like I said, this one faculty there, just really encouraging me. So I think finding support is really, really important. I find with my own Native students that having that support system of other Native students really helps. I mean, they also interact with non-Native students in my lab and in their classes, but just having the group of people that know a little bit more about what you're, where you're coming from, whether it's, from the reservation and you've, had to grow up doing a lot of different things that maybe, the majority population would never do, like hauling water and taking care of animals and that kind of thing. So I think that's really important. The other thing that I've actually been studying through a National Science Foundation grant is if there are spiritual or cultural like taboos that are for an indigenous person or a Native person difficult to get past, and yet it's expected in some of your training as a scientist. And so, for example, working with, sometimes working with animals, working with human tissue, that kind of thing, being expected to put a dollar value or resource value on natural resources, where as an indigenous person, it's really hard to think about it that way. So sometimes we are looking at right ways to get around that. I think there's other ways to train students up without forcing them to dissect animals, that kind of thing. I think that would be a way to really encourage more Native students to go into the sciences, because sometimes that's, once they get to a point in their progress, they're like, I can't do this. Being even in a classroom there, I know here on my campus, there's a classroom that has all these animal heads, and it's just kind of off-putting. And so it's really important to think about, culturally, what is something that is not really acceptable, and how can you get go a different way in order to improve the training experience, and then to allow Native students to be in chemistry and in biology and physics and microbiology and all those kinds of things. So moving to thinking about my scientific projects here at NAU, I've been really fortunate to do a lot of work on different tribal lands. I think that's been just a great experience for myself, and it's brought in more Native students. It's an opportunity for them to give back to their communities. But I think another really important part is that there are issues, problems, concerns that tribal communities have that maybe are hard to see if you're not part of that community. And so I think it's really been important to listen to community members with their concerns. A lot of the work that we've done is on old mine sites and just the environmental impacts, not just from a human standpoint, but from an animal and from the plants and those kinds of things, but to listen to the community members so that they can, describe what is of concern to them, and then work with myself as a researcher, my students as the researchers, to really get to the issue so that we can hopefully make an impact to improve the situation. And I think sometimes when there's not a lot of people involved, there's this thing, well, it's, that's an old mine site, but there's not that many people that live there, so I think it's fine. That's unacceptable. I mean, because these folks have been there for many years, and it's something that needs to be addressed. So I think that's been a great opportunity for, like I said, not just myself, but students really get passionate about what they're doing when they can really feel like they're making a difference in their communities. And so, we continue to move forward and try to listen to other, not just my own tribe, Navajo Nation, but other tribes that have, similar or even dissimilar issues. We're working right now with a group that has agricultural sort of impacts on their community. So how can we better understand how much of a certain chemical that people are being exposed to, and that kind of thing.